It happened on a night drenched in neon lights and quiet betrayal. One of those nights in Las Vegas when Elvis Presley walked on stage carrying far more than the dazzling white jumpsuit on his back. He was carrying suspicion, fear, a truth he was never meant to uncover. Hours before the show, Elvis found something. A recording, a conversation, a secret whisper behind closed doors that shattered the one thing he still believed he had: trust. And what happened backstage in that narrow hallway of the International Hotel will become one of the most emotionally devastating moments of his entire life. Tonight, we uncover the truth behind the night Elvis realized he had been betrayed by someone closer to him than family. Subscribe, because this is one of the stories the world was never meant to hear. The dressing room was colder than usual that night. Elvis sat in front of the mirror, but he wasn't looking at his reflection. His eyes were fixated on the small cassette tape resting beside the makeup brushes and cologne bottles. A simple plastic rectangle, yet heavy enough to sink a man. Charlie Hodge had found it first. He had knocked on the door earlier, face pale, hands shaking. "Elvis, you need to hear this." Elvis didn't want to. He felt it in his gut. Whatever it wasn't good. But he pushed the cassette into the player anyway. The voices that spilled out made his blood run cold. Not strangers, not journalists, not angry fans. It was a man from his own team, a man who had eaten at his table, traveled with him, prayed with him, a man he trusted. We keep him medicated, keep him tired. We control the schedule. The colonel says the worse he sleeps, the easier he is to manage. Elvis froze. Another voice responded, calm, almost casual. Elvis doesn't need to know. As long as he's exhausted, he won't fight the contracts. He'll just sign whatever we put in front of him. Elvis's hand began to tremble. No, this had to be some twisted joke. He rewound the tape, played it again. Keep him tired, the easier he is to manage. He felt something crack inside his chest. Something fragile. Something he'd been holding together for years with nothing but stage lights and pills prescribed under the wrong intentions. As the tape clicked to a stop, Charlie's voice broke the silence. "Elvis, I'm so sorry." Elvis didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on the cassette player. "I trusted him," Elvis finally whispered. His voice was thin, trembling. "I trusted all of them." Charlie sat down across from him. "Elvis, listen, this wasn't everyone. Just a few people. But you have to tell the colonel. You have to." "No," Elvis said sharply. Charlie blinked. "No." Elvis lifted his head slowly. His eyes glistened, not with rage, but with something far more painful. Betrayal. "If the colonel already knows," Elvis said, "what then?" Charlie swallowed hard. He hadn't considered that possibility, but Elvis had. He stood, pacing the room, running both hands through his thick, dark hair. "They watch me, Charlie. Every move, every pill they hand me, every hour I sleep, every contract I sign." He stopped, shoulders rising and falling. "And I let them because I thought they were trying to protect me." Charlie took a step closer. "Elvis, sit down. You're shaking." Elvis ignored him. He walked toward the door and locked it, as if afraid someone would burst in at any second. "I feel like a prisoner," he whispered, "in my own damn life." Charlie didn't know what to say. There were no comforting words for a man who had just realized the people closest to him were tightening the chains instead of loosening them. "Elvis," Charlie said gently, "you need to confront him. Whoever's behind this." Elvis's throat tightened. "I can't confront them." He placed a hand on the table to steady himself. "Because I don't know who I can trust anymore." A knock at the door made them both jump. "Elvis." 5 minutes until showtime. Elvis's pulse spiked. He looked at the mirror at last and saw a man who suddenly looked older, tired, haunted. "How do I sing after this?" he murmured. "How do I walk on that stage pretending everything's fine?" Charlie touched his shoulder. "You sing because it's the only thing they can't control." Elvis closed his eyes. He knew Charlie was right. The stage was the last place where he still felt like himself, where no contract, no manipulation, no whisper conspiracy could touch him. He took a deep breath, wiped his eyes, smoothed his suit jacket, But as he approached the door, he paused, whispering one final sentence under his breath. God help me, because tonight I walk out there as a broken man. And with that, Elvis Presley stepped into the hallway, carrying the weight of betrayal on his shoulders, and still expected to shine. The hallway leading to the stage felt longer than it ever had before. Each step Elvis took echoed through the narrow passage like a countdown. Not to a performance, but to a collapse he could no longer ignore. Charlie walked beside him, close enough to support him if needed, but wise enough not to speak. Elvis's breath trembled every few seconds, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The cassette, the voices of betrayal, it all churned inside him like poison. As they approached the wings of the stage, Elvis could hear the rising hum of the audience. Thousands of people, full of anticipation, unaware that the man they were about to see was carrying a wound deeper than any he'd ever shown. The stage manager approached. Elvis, 2 minutes. Elvis nodded mechanically. Charlie leaned closer. You don't have to go out there if you're not okay. Elvis inhaled sharply. If I don't go out, they'll assume something's wrong. And if they assume something's wrong, they'll dig. Charlie understood. The people who wanted control Elvis thrived when he looked weak. Elvis stepped closer to the curtain and peeked at the ocean of fans. Signs with his name, women crying already. Cameras ready to capture him. A glittering sea of love. Love that felt so far away from what he had just discovered backstage. I used to feel safe out there, Elvis whispered. Now I feel like they're all watching me die slow. Charlie's face tightened. You're not dying, Elvis. Elvis didn't answer. He wasn't so sure. He rubbed his forehead as another wave of dizziness washed through him. His pulse throbbed in his temples. The pills they had been giving him, pills he trusted, now felt suspicious, threatening. Had they been helping him or weakening him? His stomach twisted at the thought. The band began tuning up. The first notes vibrated through the wooden floorboards. Showtime. The curtain parted. The audience erupted. An explosion of joy and devotion. Elvis walked into the light and instantly felt like he was drowning. The heat of the spotlights pressed against his skin. His vision blurred at the edges. His heartbeat became irregular, pounding like a muffled drum inside his skull. He gripped the microphone stand just to stay upright, but the roar of the crowd demanded he pretend. So he did. He forced a smile. It trembled at the corners. Good evening, Las Vegas, he said. The audience went wild. Behind the facade, Elvis's body was screaming. Panic, exhaustion, betrayal, fear. Each breath felt shorter. The words from the tape looped endlessly. We keep him tired, we control him better this way. He blinked hard, trying to steady himself as the band kicked into the first song. His voice came out, but not the way he wanted. It lacked power, clarity. It sounded like a man singing through a fog. Charlie watched nervously from the wings. Halfway through the song, Elvis felt his knees weaken. The stage lights fractured into starbursts. Sweat beaded across his forehead. He stepped back a little, gripping the mic. In the front row, fans noticed something was wrong. A woman covered her mouth. A man leaned forward in concern. Elvis's throat tightened. He pushed through the chorus, but his voice cracked, not from strain, but from emotion he could no longer contain. When the song ended, the applause felt distant, like it was happening in another room. Elvis closed his eyes. How much of my life have they taken from me? How long have they been doing this? How many choices weren't mine? He forced himself to continue. The second number began. His breathing got worse. Every movement felt heavy, sluggish. The stage that had once been a sanctuary now felt like iron bars closing around him. Charlie signaled the band discreetly, urging them to keep an eye on him. During a soft section of the song, Elvis whispered into the microphone, so quietly that only those in the first few rows heard it. I'm so tired. A woman gasped. Someone else whispered, Is he okay? Elvis swallowed hard. He tried to sing the next line, but instead, a wave of dizziness hit him so hard his vision went completely white. He stumbled. The audience collectively inhaled. Charlie rushed forward, but Elvis held up a hand, weakly, refusing help. He didn't want them to see him collapse. He didn't want the manipulators backstage to win. He steadied himself against the piano, took one breath, two, three, then he forced out the next verse, voice trembling but filled with something raw, not performance, not showmanship, but a plea. The audience felt it. Every word was drenched in pain. Every note was a man fighting for his own life on a stage that used to save him. When the song ended, Elvis lowered his head. He knew something had to change. He knew he couldn't keep pretending. And for the first time that night, a terrifying thought crossed his mind. What if the people controlling him weren't just manipulating him, but slowly destroying him? Elvis barely made it off stage. The cheers behind him felt hollow, distant, like they belonged to someone else. His legs were unsteady, his chest tight, his skin cold despite the heat of the light still burning on his back. Charlie rushed to him as soon as the curtain fell. "Elvis, sit down just for a minute." "No," Elvis whispered, holding onto the wall. "Not here." He didn't want anyone to see him collapse. Not the crew, not the colonel, not the men who wanted him weakened. Every shaky breath felt like proof they had been succeeding. Charlie placed a hand on his back, guiding him toward the narrow hallway leading to his dressing room. The noise of the casino outside now felt like a storm pressing against thin walls. "Elvis," Charlie said carefully, "you need a doctor." Elvis stopped walking. His jaw clenched. "Whose doctor?" He spat the words like poison. "Theirs." Charlie froze. He hadn't thought of that. "Elvis, you don't think." "I don't know what to think anymore," Elvis whispered. "But I know I'm not letting anyone near me who the colonel hired." As they turned the final corner, Elvis noticed someone waiting near his door. Red West, one of the few people who wasn't afraid to speak the truth to him. One of the few who genuinely cared. But tonight, Red looked nervous, sweating, shifting from foot to foot. "Elvis," Red said, voice low, "we need to talk." Charlie frowned. "Not now. He needs to rest." "No," Elvis interrupted. "If Red's here, it's important." Red's eyes darted down the hallway, making sure no one was listening. "Elvis, the things you heard on that tape." His throat tightened. "You weren't supposed to know." Elvis felt his heart drop. "So you knew?" Red looked away. "Elvis, I didn't want any part of this. I swear to God. But there's been talk, meetings, decisions made without you." Elvis's voice trembled with restrained fury. "Talk about what, Red?" Red swallowed hard. "They've been drugging you heavier than they should." Charlie gasped. Elvis stood frozen. Red continued, voice shaking. "Some of those pills, they're not for sleep or for pain. They're meant to slow you down, make you dependent. The colonel says it keeps you predictable." Elvis felt the walls tilt. His knees weakened. Charlie grabbed his arm. "Elvis, take a breath." But Elvis pulled away, furious, devastated, disbelieving. "My God," he whispered. "How long?" Red's eyes filled with shame. "Elvis, years." A silence heavier than the Nevada desert filled the hallway. Years. They had been weakening him for years. His exhaustion, his collapses, his foggy mind, his inability to fight contracts. It wasn't just his failing health. It was orchestrated, engineered. "Red," Elvis whispered, voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Red took a step forward, ashamed. "I tried, man. I swear. But every time I got close, the colonel shut me down. He threatened to fire me. He said you wouldn't believe me." Elvis felt a sharp pain behind his eyes. Not physical, emotional. A betrayal so deep it made him dizzy. Red's voice cracked. "Elvis, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have stayed quiet. I should have told you sooner. But I was scared." Elvis lifted his head slowly. "Everyone's scared," he murmured. "Scared of the colonel. Scared of the machine. Scared of losing their job. But no one was scared for me." "Elvis," Charlie whispered. Something inside Elvis snapped. He slammed his fist against the wall. The sound echoed violently through the hallway. "I trusted them," he growled. "I trusted all of them. And they look me in the eye every day while they poison me." Charlie and Red exchanged horrified looks. Elvis pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. The panic attack hit fast and brutal. His breath shortened. The hallway blurred. The floor tilted. Elvis. Charlie rushed to steady him. Red grabbed the other side. No hospitals, Elvis gasped. No doctors. No colonel. Just get me inside. They guided him into the dressing room, where Elvis collapsed onto the couch, gripping the edge as if the world might fall from under him. Charlie knelt beside him. Elvis, you're safe here. Just breathe. Red stood by the door, shaken. He had seen Elvis angry. He had seen Elvis exhausted. But he had never seen Elvis broken. Elvis lifted his head, tears forming despite his attempt to fight them. They took my life, he whispered, piece by piece. And I didn't even see it happening. Charlie put a hand on his arm. Elvis, you're not done yet. Elvis met his eyes. And for the first time that night, a spark, small but real, appeared behind the pain. No, Elvis whispered. I'm not. For nearly 10 minutes, Elvis sat on the couch trying to steady his breathing, the room spinning around him in slow, nauseating circles. Charlie stayed by his side, rubbing his shoulder in quiet reassurance. Red paced near the door, guilt etched into every line of his face. Elvis, Charlie murmured, you need water. Elvis nodded weakly. His throat felt raw, from rage, from fear, from the truth he had swallowed for years without realizing it. Before Charlie could step away, there was a sharp knock at the door. 3 knocks. Slow. Confident. Red stiffened. That's him. Elvis froze. The colonel? No. This knock wasn't aggressive enough. This was someone else. Red opened the door only a crack, and immediately stepped aside. Joe Esposito walked in, one of Elvis's closest friends. A man Elvis trusted with his life. A man who had been there since the Army. Elvis, Joe said softly, his expression strained. We need to talk. Silence filled the room like smoke. Charlie moved protectively closer to Elvis. Red stayed near the door, ready to intervene. Joe raised his hands. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I heard what happened. Someone told me you listened to that tape. Elvis's jaw clenched. Joe took a few cautious steps forward. Elvis, it's not what you think. Elvis stared at him with hollow eyes. Then explain it. Joe swallowed hard. There was genuine fear in his face. Fear not of Elvis's anger, but of losing a friendship he had relied on for years. Elvis, things got out of control. The colonel, he wanted more influence, more authority. He said you were slipping, that you needed structure. Elvis scoffed. Structure? Is that what you call drugging a man? Joe winced. Elvis, listen. No. Elvis snapped, his voice cracking. You listen? I heard your voice on that tape. Charlie and Red exchanged stunned looks. Joe's face drained of color. Elvis, please. Elvis stood, trembling but determined, his voice lowered to a dangerous, heartbreaking softness. I heard you say it, Joe. Keep him tired. Keep him quiet. He doesn't need to know. Joe flinched like each phrase was a bullet. Charlie was stunned. Red looked sick. Elvis, Joe whispered, edging closer, I swear to God, I never meant to hurt you. Elvis stared at him as if seeing a stranger. Joe continued, voice cracking. The colonel said it was for your own good, that you were getting too emotional, too unpredictable, that the show, the fans, the whole operation needed you steady. Steady, Elvis repeated bitterly. You mean sedated. Joe ran a trembling hand over his face. Colonel told us that if we didn't help him manage you, you'd spiral, that you'd die. I thought I was protecting you, Elvis. I swear I did. Elvis closed his eyes. Hearing the betrayal from Joe's own mouth was worse than the tape. The man he had trusted with secrets, with family matters, with his own fears, had been working with the colonel behind his back. Red stepped forward. You should have told him the truth, Joe. Joe looked at Red with tired eyes. You think I didn't want to? You think I didn't see what it was doing to him? But the colonel, he controls everything. Money, security, doctors, schedules, press. He said if anyone crossed him, he'd destroy their lives. Elvis whispered, so you chose him over me. Joe shook his head violently. No, I chose what I thought was keeping you alive. Elvis opened his eyes slowly. And look at me, Joe. Joe did. What he saw broke him. A man drained, trembling, barely standing. A shelled friend he once knew. Does this look alive to you? Elvis whispered. Joe's breath hitched. Elvis, I'm so sorry. Charlie stepped between them. Sorry is enough. Red crossed his arms. You let this happen. You let him fall apart. Joe's voice cracked as he whispered, I know. Silence. Then Elvis said something none of them expected. Joe, do you still work for him? Joe's pause gave him away. Elvis. Yes, Elvis murmured. You do. Joe's eyes filled with tears. Elvis, please don't push me away. I don't want to lose you. Elvis wiped a trembling hand across his forehead. You lost me the moment you chose to control over my life. Joe took a shaky step toward him, but Elvis stepped back. Leave, Elvis whispered. Joe froze. Elvis, leave. Joe lowered his head and walked out. As the door clicked shut, Elvis collapsed into the chair, breath shaking, heart aching. Charlie knelt beside him. Are you okay? Elvis stared blankly at the door. I don't know who my friends are anymore. The moment the door closed behind Joe, the room fell into an unbearable silence. Not the peaceful kind. This one felt heavy, suffocating, crawling into every corner of Elvis's chest. He sat hunched in the dressing room chair, elbows on his knees, hands shaking uncontrollably. His breathing came in shallow, uneven bursts. Charlie and Red exchanged worried glances. Elvis, Charlie whispered, crouching beside him. Talk to us. Say something. But Elvis didn't speak. He didn't look up. He stared at the floor as if it were the only thing keeping him anchored to reality. Red stepped closer, guilt weighing him down. Elvis, I know this is a lot, but we're here, man. We're with you. Still nothing. Elvis, Charlie repeated, gently touching his shoulder. That small gesture shattered what little control Elvis had left. His chest tightened violently. A tremor ran through his entire body. Suddenly he felt cold. So cold, he wrapped his arms around himself. Then, a sob tore out of him. Raw, involuntary, painful. His whole body curled inward, as if trying to shield itself from everything that had been taken from him. Charlie's eyes filled instantly. He hadn't seen Elvis cry like that since Gladys died. Red closed the door quietly, locking it from the inside. He knew Elvis didn't want anyone to walk in, not the colonel, not crew members, not anyone who would twist this moment into weakness. Elvis, buddy, breathe, Red whispered. But Elvis couldn't. Years of pressure, manipulation, exploitation, exhaustion, betrayal. Everything hit him at once like a tidal wave. It's all gone. Elvis finally choked out between ragged breaths. My trust, my friends, my life. Everything I thought was real. Charlie grabbed his hands, grounding him. Elvis, look at me. Look at me. Elvis lifted his eyes. And Charlie almost broke himself. There was no strength left there. No fire. Nothing of the man who had once set stages on fire. Only a desperate, wounded soul fighting to stay afloat. They took my choices, Elvis whispered. They took my health, my sleep, my freedom. And I let them. Red swallowed back tears. No. Elvis, you didn't let them. They manipulated you, lied to you, controlled everything around you. Elvis shook his head violently. But I didn't see it. I should have seen it. How could I be so blind? Charlie squeezed his hands tighter. Because you trusted them. Because you have a good heart. Because you believed they cared. Elvis inhaled shakily. I thought Joe was my brother. Red nodded sadly. We all did. Elvis pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. I don't even know what's real anymore. What decisions were mine? What feelings were mine? What memories were mine? Charlie whispered, they didn't just drug your body, they drugged your mind. That sentence broke Elvis. His breath hitched violently, and he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. Charlie wrapped an arm around him. Red placed a hand on his back. They didn't try to stop him from crying. They didn't tell him to be strong. They didn't pretend everything would be okay. They just stayed. Minutes passed. Slow, torturous minutes filled with quiet sobs and trembling breaths. Finally, when Elvis lifted his head, his face was streaked with tears, his eyes red, his voice hoarse. "I'm scared," he whispered. It was the most honest thing he had said in years. Charlie nodded. "You're allowed to be," Red added, voice shaking. "No man on earth could go through what you've been through and not fall apart." Elvis wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming. "What do I do now?" he whispered. "How do I go back out there? How do I keep living like this?" Charlie looked at him with a seriousness Elvis had rarely seen. "You don't keep living like this." Elvis blinked. "You change it," Charlie continued. "You take control back, piece by piece, even if it scares the hell out of you." Red nodded. "You're not alone anymore, Elvis. You have us, and we're done being scared of the Colonel." Elvis's breath trembled. A tiny flicker, small, fragile, ignited somewhere behind the exhaustion. "Hope. I don't know if I'm strong enough," he whispered. Charlie held his gaze. "You don't have to be strong. You just have to be willing." Elvis let out a long, shaking breath, and for the first time, he wasn't crying from betrayal, but from the possibility, however small, that he might still have a future not controlled by the men who were destroying him. The dressing room felt eerily quiet after the storm of emotion. Elvis sat between Charlie and Red, drained, broken, and hollowed out, yet somehow more awake than he had been in years. The weight in his chest hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. It no longer felt like a death sentence. It felt like a crossroads. For the first time that night, Elvis lifted his head and looked around the room as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The lights, the costumes, the clutter, the schedule pinned to the wall. His life, a gilded cage he'd mistaken for a kingdom. "Elvis," Charlie said softly, still holding his arm, "whatever you decide, we're with you." Red nodded in agreement. "You're not facing this alone anymore." Elvis swallowed hard. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "I can't keep living like this." Those words didn't echo, they landed. Heavy, certain, true. Charlie exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. Red crossed his arms, jaw tightening with resolve. "Then we end it. Tonight." Elvis blinked. "And what?" "The Colonel's control," Red answered. "The doctors he pushes on you. The pills. The handlers who lie. The whole damn machine." Charlie added, "It starts with one decision, Elvis. Yours." A tremor ran through Elvis's chest. For so long, every choice that mattered had been made for him. What to eat, when to sleep, what to wear, what to say, what pills to take, which contracts to sign. It had been so gradual, so subtle, that he hadn't noticed the moment he stopped being the king and became property. Elvis wiped his face slowly. He was shaking, but there was something new in his eyes, not strength exactly, but clarity. "What if—" Elvis hesitated, as if afraid to say it aloud. "What if I walk away? What if I end the contract? The shows? The Colonel, everything?" Charlie held his breath. Red froze. It was a question neither of them expected so soon, but the question both had hoped he'd ask one day. "Elvis," Charlie said gently, "if that's what you want, then we'll fight for it." Red nodded firmly. "We'll stand by you." Elvis looked down at his trembling hands. "But if I leave, who am I? What's left of me without all this?" Charlie didn't look away. "You're still Elvis. You're still a man. You're still someone who deserves to live, not just perform until he collapses." Elvis inhaled slowly, feeling the words sink deep into the cracks of his breaking heart. Then he whispered something almost sacred. "I want my life back." The room went still. The world outside the door, the cheers, the hotel staff, the bright Vegas chaos, suddenly felt irrelevant. Red moved closer. "Then that's what we're going to get you." But Elvis shook his head. "No, I'm going to get it. You two can help, but this fight is mine." The shift in him was unmistakable. Small, fragile, trembling, but real. A man reclaiming his own name. Before anyone could speak again, a loud knock shattered the moment. "Elvis!" The Colonel's voice bellowed through the door. "We need to discuss what happened tonight." Open this door immediately. Elvis's stomach tightened, but something inside him didn't shrink this time. Red clenched his fists. Ignore him, Charlie whispered. You don't have to face him tonight. But Elvis stood. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. He walked the mirror, staring at his reflection. The sweat, the tears, the exhaustion, the bruised soul. Then he whispered, "No more being afraid." The colonel pounded again. "Elvis, now!" Elvis turned toward the door, then stopped. "Red," he said softly, "unlock it." Red hesitated. "Elvis, are you sure?" Elvis nodded. Red unlocked the door. But when he opened it, Elvis took only one step forward and raised a hand. No, just that. One word. Firm. Controlled. Final. The colonel's face twisted. What the hell does that mean? Elvis's eyes didn't waver. It means not tonight. It means not now. It means you don't get to control me anymore. The hallway went silent. Parker looked stunned, truly stunned, as if the words were something alien coming from Elvis's mouth. "Elvis." "Leave," Elvis said quietly, "before I say something I can't take back." Parker's jaw worked in disbelief. But Elvis didn't blink, didn't break, didn't fold. For the first time, the colonel stepped back, slowly, reluctantly, defeated, and Elvis closed the door. The moment the latch clicked, Elvis exhaled, a long, trembling breath that felt like it had been trapped in his lungs for years. He turned back to Charlie and Red, and whispered, "This is the first night in a long time I feel like I'm still alive." Charlie smiled through tears. Red placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Elvis sank into the couch, exhausted, hurting, terrified, but free. Not fully, not forever, but tonight, for the first time in a long time, he belonged to himself.